If you want to learn biblical Hebrew, but you think it's too hard, stay tuned. And here to tell us all about biblical Hebrew is the man who knows, Dr. Danny Ben Gigi. Welcome to Prophecy Watchers, Danny.
Thank you very much. My pleasure to be here.
I'd like to say right up front, Danny is the former director of Hebrew programs at Arizona State University. He grew up in Israel. He's a native speaker, speaks Hebrew beautifully, and he has a heart to teach it to other people. And there is what I'm interested in, because I think, Danny, everybody thinks the Hebrew language is too hard to learn. It doesn't even use the right alphabet. You know, how can you possibly learn Hebrew?
Well, I'll start this way. I started speaking Hebrew maybe when I was like 3 days old, maybe a few days later. It's one of the most natural languages in the world.
Ah.
And why so? This is a language that God has written His Bible. Would anybody think that you'll use a cumbersome language, a language that has no logic, with that so much might and beauty and ingenious way of creating the world? God has done a pure, perfect language. That's what is Hebrew, and it's much easier than most people think. When I hear the expression, oh, it sounds like Hebrew to me, I'm offended. I said, no, don't say that. Have you ever tried to learn the Hebrew? Pastor Gary, I've seen audiences when we sit down and we manage to teach it to a proficiency of 50% within an hour and a half. People say, oh, it's impossible. I say, sit down, let's try you out. Actually, in your own conference that ended yesterday, we put that to test a few times.
And once you begin to do this, you'll be astounded at how the Bible opens up like a flower. It gives you a sense of Scripture that you can't get any other way, right?
Absolutely. It's an extra, not to say that people cannot do anything with English Bibles or Spanish Bible. They are perfect Bibles. But what Hebrew does, it adds an extra dimension. How to put it in a way that it'll be clear. Let's use the example of a couple. You know, we're coming from the south, from Arizona. Many people speak Spanish, and in many churches you'll find people that are Spanish speaking, from a Spanish descent, and they are very involved in the church. So take an imaginary church with Juan and his wife, Maria. And they've been in the church for 30 years, and Juan is involved in some activity of the church, and Maria does the singing ministry of the children, and they are being excellent, and everything is done in English, and it's perfect. But here is the moment when the big service is done, they're getting into their car, and Juan wants to reaffirm his love and commitment to his wife, Maria. Do you think for a second that he's going to tell her, when they're alone in their car, Maria, I love you? No way, Jose. You're going to tell her, Maria ti amo. You know, this is their intimate tongue. And so is the Hebrew. Hebrew is the intimate tongue of God and angels. So yes, you can pray in Hebrew, in English, and in Spanish, and in any other language. But the intimacy, to reach intimacy, Hebrew will add another dimension of softness and beauty to any person that emanates a word in Hebrew.
Years ago, when I first encountered biblical Hebrew as an English speaker, it was sort of taught to me by people who were saying, now, this is going to be very, very hard. You're going to have to work very hard to learn Hebrew. And it was presented to me as difficult. When I read Danny's books, and here's one called God's Secrets Only Hebrew Can Reveal, that doesn't happen. You open this book and it invites you to come in, and it's very easy to read, and it makes the language open up, and that's your gift.
Thank you.
You are a great teacher, and that's what I want people to know about, because There are a lot of people out there, Danny, who would really like to be familiar with the Hebrew language, and they're frightened by it, I think. You were at our recent Blessed Hope Prophecy Conference, and you did some seminars there, standing room only, I might add, and people came out absolutely excited about what you were saying.
Thank you so much. The first thing is you approach this language, and I want to tell you, that was the best prophecy conference I've ever heard in the world. I mean, I checked on people, and you had a representation of the globe, but I didn't find any single human being from Antarctica, nor did I see any penguins, but there are people from all over, and which is a great thing, diversity of people meeting there. I enjoyed immensely. I almost cried when your conference ended. It was really a beauty. For me, it was like a great glory of the soul.
Indeed. A real meeting of the minds. Now, let's get to the subject at hand, and let's give a few examples of how you teach Hebrew. In fact, I'm looking at a card here, the Extended Hebrew Alphabet, and this card has on it the names of the Hebrew letters, and it has the pictures of the Hebrew letters, and the meanings of the Hebrew letters very well, clearly laid out. And you begin there. Let's go ahead and flesh that out a little bit.
Thank you. Well, the chart is something to assist people in one look to see everything. It's an overview of the entire Hebrew language, and it's supported by English. Just like the book that you mentioned, God's Secrets Only Hebrew Can Reveal, instead of putting people on the spot and say, okay, and put it in their face, Hebrew, what we did, we took a system that is called phonetic. Basically, those are Hebrew words spelled out with English characters. But furthermore, in this book, we have 145 revelations that English Bibles, for some reason, this way or another, have kept in the dark. So there are, in each page, in each revelation, there is only one Hebrew word. And to make sure that everybody will never say, oh, it's so difficult, we put the word in phonetic. So we wrote it in Hebrew, but just next to it, we wrote it in Hebrew, in English characters. So it's so simple, like they take the word, even a complicated word in Hebrew, many characters, menorah, you know, what gives the light, the candelabra.
Right.
So we put it as M-O, little bullet to separate the syllable, N-O, M-E, sorry, M-E-N-O, and then a little bullet to separate the syllable, and R-A. So everybody can read me-no-ra. And so we did for every word. So in fact, people can emanate the word in Hebrew, the one word that we have per each revelation, extremely simply. I've never seen one person that stumbled on that, because they can read it in English.
You told me something before we came on today that I found very interesting. At the very beginning of the Bible, God said, let there be light. Everybody knows those words in English, let there be light. Well, if you understand the Hebrew, you get a whole new dimension. Tell us about that.
It bothered me that verse, this very verse in the Bible, in the English Bible, let there be light, bothered me. When I look at the Hebrew, this is not what it says there. But because of the English has a little bit of shortcoming to reflect exactly the true deep depth of the meaning in Hebrew, that's a great example. Well, what he actually says, God says in that verse in English, in Hebrew, instead of saying, let there be light, that's a very weak expression. Let there be indicates that between emanating the word or request of God to have a light, there is something need to take place in between. Let there be, let's wait. Yeah, it worked. Or let there be, oh, it didn't work. Let's try it again. No such thing in Hebrew. It's very precise. So when God says in English, let there be, and actually in Hebrew he says, be light. And in imperative, it's a command.
Command.
And it follows, and God says, be light, and it's been light, to indicate, to show that his word is also the action. Nothing needed there to mediating between his emanating the word and the action to take place. Kind of an interesting principle.
And you have many, many examples just like this in your Bible. God's secrets only Hebrew can reveal. Beautifully laid out, by the way.
Thank you.
The typography, the color printing, there are some illustrations. You really have to see this book to appreciate it, but page after page will give you insights, just like Danny talked about a moment ago. What's another of your favorite insights from this book?
Do you like me to stay on the light side?
That's fine.
Let's stay on the light side
The
before we
light-
get to heavy
Well, we've
duty.
been talking about light. Let's stay on the light side.
Let's stay on the light side. You know, the great, otherwise great artist Michelangelo made this beautiful statue that every person in the world knows. And if they don't know, go on into Google it and find out the great statue of Moses that Michelangelo, the otherwise intelligent artist, made. But he made a horrific and horrible mistake by not understanding Hebrew. He put Moses, if you look at this picture, with two horns coming out of his head, which is a complete distortion of the Bible. You know, that mistake happened because of a simple word. The Bible speaks about Moses coming down, ascending from Mount Sinai, and described that his face glowed. They were glowing, they were shining. The word glow or shine in Hebrew is keren. But the word keren also means horn. So here is an uninformed, great artist otherwise, taking a wrong interpretation of the Hebrew, and he put horns on the head of Moses, whereas the Bible only said that his face was glowing, shining. Do you see what a distortion? And this statue, millions of believers see that, and they're wondering, what's the connection between the horn and Moses? Zero connection. His face was glowing because he came from the presence of God. Great distortion, but it's still on the light side.
Now
Another
let's-
one of the light side?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I'm asking people, when you go to the bank, you know, and everybody, it's a chore that everybody does. You go deposit a check, do something. Who is the person that you're meeting in the bank? The first one that talks to you. Who is that person? Who is that person?
Teller.
The teller. Now, the next question is why these people on earth are called teller. When you go to the bank, Pastor Gary, and you say, here's a check of my paycheck, and you deposit it, does the teller take the check from you and say, hello, Pastor Gary or Gary, once upon a time, there was a king in a kingdom beyond the mountain. They never do that, right? They'll never do that. But why are the tellers?
Why are they called tellers?
But why are they called tellers? Because of another mistake of misunderstanding Hebrew. It's coming from the root, the root tel comes from the word sefer in Hebrew. S-A-S-E-F-E-R. Sefer. That's the root, or safar, okay? That root has two meanings. One of them is to tell, like to tell a story. The other one is to count, which basically was the purpose of a banker. They were counting money or gold or other things.
So
that
his
were brought.
title goes back to Hebrew.
It does, and so many other words in English that people cannot even imagine. When somebody approaches you and say, "Thank you, sir," he is using biblical Hebrew. But British people will tell you, "Oh, it's coming from the sir. This is the high rank, exalted position coming from England." Not so. That high exalted name is coming from the Hebrew word sar, and sar is the prince. And in fact, it's one of the name of Jesus himself, Yeshua. Sar Shalom, the Prince of Peace. But it doesn't stop only there. That word, sar, is the word that affected the word of what you're about, ministry. You hear the SR in ministry, coming from an exalted position. Ministry has to do with being a prince of knowledge and love and Bible. And it affected other cultures too. Look, the great leader of Russia, he was called the Tsar. Do you hear the similarity between the Tsar and the Tsar? The same. And did not stop there. The great leaders in Germany, you know, there was the Kaiser, which is also coming from there. And the great leaders of Rome, the Caesar. You can hear the Tsar in Caesar. And so on and on. It affected many languages.
Now, I've got a couple of audio CDs here. One's Phonetic New Testament, Hebrew English. The other one is called God's Secrets Only Hebrew Can Reveal. audio CDs in the New Testament.
Oh, okay. In fact, the God Secrets Only Hebrew Can Reveal. These are two CDs that come along with the book. The first one is an audio CD, and people can also hear in their ears the words that are written, and also written in phonetic. So it's like a triple reinforcement of being able to emanate words in Hebrew. The other CD is it's a CD-ROM, in fact. That people can put it in their computer, and they can get the entire New Testament written in Hebrew, in English, and in phonetic, which is once again the Hebrew words of the New Testament written with English characters.
The New Testament was written in Greek, and so what are you adding to the Greek New Testament when you read it in Hebrew?
Well, this issue in what language
I have to ask.
It's still a debate. I speak with some, and you might find it surprising. I spoke with a Christian professor of ancient Greek, and he told me something that I could not believe my ears. He said something that the Greek of the New Testament is not written in proper Greek, except for the book of Hebrews. And I said, Professor, are you serious? I said, Danny, I'm a Christian and I'm a professor of Greek, ancient Greek. You can tell that it is affected by Hebraic mindset. Look, who are the people there? It happened in the land of Israel. Yeshua, Jesus, was acting there. All his people, all his followers for at least 200 and some years were Hebraic people, Jewish people. They spoke Hebrew. And when the book was written, the Gospels was written, they are written by those followers of Yeshua, the disciples. And their Hebrew was paramount and greater than knowledge of Greek. With all due respect to Greek, what happened there? Greece conquered the Holy Land, conquered Israel.
Yes.
And just like it happens in some border states in America, the language of Greek was imposed on the people of the Bible, on the language of the land. And you could not get, at Jesus' time, you could not get a job if you did not speak Greek. Likewise, in Arizona or in some place in Texas, you can speak Spanish, and it's a blessed language and it's the heritage of many people, but they can't get really a good job without speaking English. That was exactly the case at the time. They had to speak Greek. Now, many people lost the Hebrew. They couldn't speak it. The language of the land was Greek, but the Bible was very important for people to know. Now, if we look at the New Testament, every single one of the Gospels were letters written to our brothers over the sea, in Galatia, in Ephesia, in Corinthia, and they had to write it in Greek because people lived there for years. They spoke only Greek, but the heart beyond the language there is very Hebraic.
And so the professor was right. You were reading the language of people who thought in Hebrew but translated their thoughts into Greek.
Yes, exactly. And it's not to say that the book is not great and very deep and wonderful in terms of spirit. Spirit, Pastor Gary, does not need the language. We're telling the story of the boy that was praying, but the boy could not really emanate good words. He was stuttering and he was not intelligent. And the only way that person can pray is maybe tapping on the table. Who would doubt that God will not hearken to the prayer that comes from the heart of the boy through tapping? You can pray in any tongue in the world, God will hearken, but there is an intimate touch of the Hebrew words emanated, because we show it in the word or, at the example that you gave me, the word light. God, I didn't mention, something extra in the word light. When he says be light, the word light in Hebrew is or.
Yes.
And for there come the word aura, the aura. That
comes right into English as aura.
Right.
Ooh,
exactly.
That's very interesting.
Right. And the halo that they're using in the Byzantine pictures and so on, also coming from a Hebrew word, from the word tabernacle, which is ohel. And look at that. Ohel affected that word. And it was like a tabernacle of light protecting those saints at the time.
You know, I'm holding Danny's book, and on page 75, there's a word I'll bet you know in Hebrew. It's called shalom. And,
Oh.
and here, and I'm going to try to get a picture of this up on the screen so you can see it. Shalom.
Shalom, Pastor Gary.
Shalom. Shalom, Danny.
Shalom.
And it says right here at the top of the page, it means peace, it means hello, it means goodbye. And you go into then an explanation of shalom.
And it's a beauty. It's a beauty. The word shalom comes in Hebrew from the root shalem, which means completeness or wholeness. But it also, like in Hebrew, as already know, has another meaning. It means to pay, when you're paying something. But think for a second of the connection between peace and payment. Like if you open a deal with a person and you do not pay for that, is there peace between you? No way. There will be no peace. But when you pay that person, there is peace. The deal, the transaction has completed. And that's the connection between paying and completeness. But it's greater than that. The word shalem means completeness or wholeness. We look at God as the complete and whole. And if you remember, all of us, you're speaking about this dwelling place, Jerusalem. Now let's listen to the word, Jerusalem. You hear the shalom, the salem in the word, Jerusalem. And all the J in English are actually Ye in Hebrew.
Okay.
So the name of that city was Jerusalem. And Yeru means either they will feel the awe or they will see the completeness, the wholeness of God over his dwelling place, Jerusalem.
Wow. And that's what it's all about. We're not talking about something here that is frightening. We're talking about something that is fascinating.
It's a beauty.
It pulls you in, as it were. And you have captured the spirit, I think, of the language. Again, I have to say, I've known some teachers who try to scare you. Well, this is going to be very hard for you to learn because it took me 18 years to learn this, and it probably will take you 20 years. And sometimes teachers try to scare you to death with their great knowledge. But this is very inviting. You take the exact opposite turn.
You know what, Pastor? You know what is the key? The key is love. When you do it with love, and of course, you need to have some knowledge. This is really hurting my heart. There are many teachers, as you said, in this country. The problem with many of the teachers on this that I know, and believe me, in my city and other places, I know many of the teachers. They've all been somewhere or another, my students, in this way or form or another. The problem with some, that they are hired because of connection and other kind of reasons. They don't know the Hebrew well enough to feel confident. And when you don't know the tongue, anybody who's trying to teach something that they don't know, they will lack the confidence. And we transmit that fear that they have it in their own from the language to their students. But when it's done with love, the simplicity is overflowing. It's really simple. I don't know any human being that cannot learn, not learn to the point to be a professor of Hebrew, and there is no need for that. Sometimes, Pastor, it's enough to emanate a word in Hebrew that is in the heart, that is really sitting on the heart of a person. When they know there are 22 letters in Hebrew, out of which each English speaker knows already 11 at the same order. What does it take to learn them? Not much. And there are 5 sounds. A, E, I, O, and U. A, E, I, O, and U. And that's it. And you put together the sounds and the letters, and you read. And I've seen people reading. And actually, yesterday in your conference, we put people that never seen Hebrew in their lives, and they're like, oh, I said, don't be afraid. And I put people on the spot. I said, you, without a finger. Go ahead, write your name. Oh, I can't do that. Yes, you can. Here's the chart. What is the, and they're like in English, the L, Lamed, and they start the same letters, and they start writing, and it was beautiful. But I want to say something that people can really see. I'll read it if you don't mind. What's the importance of Hebrew, and why does it relate to ordinary people? They're Christians, and they will say, well, it's kind of it's a flavor. And I would say, no, it's an essence. but we don't have time, right?
We have about a minute, if you can do it in a
Okay,
minute.
let's start do it quickly. So our sages spoke about the importance of praying or emanating words of importance on the heart in Hebrew. They taught that even though permission was granted to pray or say words in other languages, which is fine, it has always been favored to pray in Lashon HaKodesh, the holy tongue. In numerous writings since the biblical era, Hebrew was always known as the holy, it was a reference to the spiritual divine language Hebrew. The sages taught that it was even better to pray in Hebrew even if the praying person did not know the meaning of the words to that extent. And there is an ancient tradition that was teaching us that God has created the world using 22 Hebrew letters as raw material for the creation. And these very words that you showed, Pastor, in the book, when he says, be light, yehi or, he is using 3 letters as part of his 4-letter name, the uninterpreted name, the tetragrammaton, the Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. That was like, he's using it, the letters of his name to create.
And God is described in the Bible, in him is light and there is no darkness at all. So he is light.
Light is an entity of light. I like it a lot.
I have just time to offer you Danny's book, God's Secrets Only Hebrew Can Reveal. This is a wonderful, inviting book. It'll pull you through the pages, page after page, and you're going to learn things that you will be delighted to learn. And, by the way, it comes with this extended Hebrew alphabet chart showing you how the Hebrew language works in a way that you'll find fascinating, and it'll pull you right in. Also, with this, now, this is the transliterated New Testament case. Inside that case, you'll find the phonetic New Testament, and you'll find God's Secrets Only Hebrew Can Reveal. And we're going to combine this CD-ROM and this audio CD and this chart together right inside this book, God's Secrets Only Hebrew Can Reveal. And we're calling it the Hebrew Secrets Package. Danny Ben Gigi has outdone himself for your gift of $60 to help Prophecy Watchers. We're going to send this package along to you. Ask for the Hebrew Secrets Package. Go to prophecywatchers.com, scroll down to the online bookstore, and you will find this. By the way, free shipping in the United States. So you'll love to have this. And I should say this is a $120 value that you'll be receiving for your gift of $60. Danny, we have about half a moment. And I'd like to just give you like 2 or 3 seconds here to just sum up today's broadcast.
So I'll thank you very much, and I think everybody, every human being, it will not take away anything from the importance of doing everything in English, but it will add an extra exalted spiritual dimension to finally commit. And even if you say 1 word in Hebrew a day, or a week, or a month, you're in better shape than not doing it.
Amen. Danny Ben Gigi has a lot to offer. I'm Gary Stearman. Hey, you keep watching. We are.